She watched, her heart pounding, as the smug TSA agent tore apart her dress with a cruel grin plastered on his face. What he didn't know was that her husband controlled this airport. Payback was coming, and it wouldn't be subtle. It was just another bustling morning at LAX. Crowds hustled through the terminal, the hum of flight announcements blending with the occasional beep of scanners. But for Gabriella Jenkins, today was different. She wasn't just another passenger in line. Gabriella exuded a kind of style that demanded attention. Her elegant, floor-length black dress clung to her curves, the fabric whispering luxury. Delicate yet striking, it turned heads as she glided through the terminal. Her husband, Michael Jenkins, was a well-known businessman, the type of man who owned half the airport and wielded connections that could open any door. Gabriella was accustomed to privilege, but she wore it lightly. Confidence was her real armor, quiet, unshakable, and effortlessly commanding. Yet today, none of that mattered. As she approached the TSA checkpoint, Gabriella noticed a security agent watching her. His smirk was unsettling, his gaze lingering far too long. He was middle-aged, average height, his uniform straining slightly around his shoulders as if he'd outgrown it years ago. There was a smugness in his posture, a deliberate air of authority. Gabriella placed her belongings in the bin, preparing for the usual routine, but something about his demeanor made her uneasy. "Step aside, ma'am," he said abruptly. His tone was cold, almost too formal, as though he relished the chance to flex his power. "We'll need to do a more thorough check. That dress of yours looks expensive." Gabriella raised an eyebrow. She'd been through TSA countless times. She knew the drill. But there was something off about the way he spoke, the way his eyes scanned her like she was an object to be scrutinized. "You're kidding, right?" "It's just a dress," she replied, her voice calm yet edged with steel. Still, a gnawing feeling in her gut told her this wasn't going to be a normal check. The agent didn't respond. Instead, he began rifling through her belongings with deliberate slowness, inspecting her purse, her shoes, even her carry-on bag, as if he had all the time in the world. Gabriella's patience was wearing thin, but she stood her ground. She dealt with worse. Or so she thought. Without warning, the agent reached out and grabbed the hem of her dress. His hand jerked upward, and with a sharp motion, the fabric ripped. The sound of tearing silk echoed in the terminal, and Gabriella's heart dropped. "Hold up. What the hell?" Gabriella gasped, clutching at the ruined fabric. The tear wasn't minor. It ran down the side of her dress, leaving a wide, gaping hole that ruined its elegant design. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her as passengers turned to stare, their whispers spreading like wildfire. "Oops," the agent said with a twisted grin. "Guess your dress isn't as sturdy as it looks. Looks like it's not even worth that much, huh?" Gabriella froze, her shock giving way to a tidal wave of anger. "Are you serious?" she choked out, her voice low but sharp. The agent shrugged, unbothered. "Hey, sometimes things get rough. It's not my fault your dress was fragile." Gabriella's blood boiled. This wasn't just about the dress anymore. It was about the humiliation, the blatant disrespect. She tried to keep her head high, but inside, her fury burned. This wasn't the first time she'd faced prejudice. The whispers of judgment, of racism, were always close behind. And this agent, he had the look of someone who saw her as less than. "You're going to pay for that," she said, her voice icy, her patience gone. "Sure, whatever," he muttered dismissively, moving on to the next passenger without a second glance. "File your complaint, sweetheart. It's not like I'm the one footing the bill." That was the breaking point. Gabriella pulled out her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed Michael's number. "Michael, I need you here. Now." Her voice shook, a mixture of rage and disbelief spilling through the receiver. "What happened?" Michael's voice was sharp, laced with concern. "The TSA agent," she began, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He tore my dress, right in front of everyone." And he laughed. "He thinks it's some kind of joke." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Michael's tone dropped, cold and commanding. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." Gabriella took a deep breath, willing herself to stay composed. The moment felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She was no stranger to discrimination, but this wasn't just about race. It was about dignity. Her worth had been tossed aside like trash, and the agent had no idea who he was messing with. As she stood there, trying to hold herself together, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Baby girl, I saw what happened." Gabriella turned to see a woman in her 60s, dressed in a cozy cardigan and sensible shoes. Her eyes were filled with concern. "You didn't deserve that," the woman said softly. "You've got every right to be mad. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Gabriella blinked, surprised by the kindness. The woman gave her a warm smile, one that reminded her of her grandmother. "I've been through it too, sugar. Don't let these fools get to you. If you need a witness, I'm happy to speak up. You're not alone in this." For the first time that morning, Gabriella felt a spark of hope. The universe had a way of placing the right people in her path when she needed them most. And as Michael's voice crackled through her phone once more, that spark ignited into a blazing fire. "This isn't over," Gabriella whispered to herself, her chin lifting a little higher. Not by a long shot. She paced near the security checkpoint, the remains of her dress still clinging to her like armor. The agent's mocking words echoed in her mind. "It's not my fault your dress was fragile." But he had underestimated her. Gabriella Jenkins was no fragile woman, and she was about to prove it. Gabriella could feel the weight of the stares on her, the judgment from strangers who had seen the whole thing unfold. But what really gnawed at her was the way that TSA agent had sized her up, like she was nothing more than a target for his petty power trip. She'd seen that look before, and it always made her blood run cold. Yet, she wasn't going to let him win. Just as she was about to call Michael again, her phone buzzed. It was him. Gabriella answered before it even finished ringing. "Baby, where are you?" Michael's voice crackled through the line, sharp but full of concern. "I'm 5 minutes out, and I swear, if I don't get to this airport soon, somebody's going to regret it." Gabriella let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I'm right here at security, baby, just waiting." "Good. Don't move. I'm coming in hot. I've got something to say to this punk who thinks he can mess with my wife." Gabriella could hear the fury in his voice. She wasn't worried. She knew Michael could handle it. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who had worked his way to the top by making sure people respected him. And if they didn't, they learned real quick who they were dealing with. A few minutes later, Michael stormed into the security area, his presence impossible to ignore. His sharp suit and polished shoes clicked against the tile floor, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the room. He was every bit the man people looked up to, and when he walked into a room, people knew he meant business. Gabriella spotted him immediately and felt a wave of relief wash over her. Michael didn't waste a second. Without even looking at Gabriella, he marched straight toward the TSA supervisor, a woman standing near the security desk. "Hey, you," he barked, his voice booming through the crowded terminal. "I need to speak with you. Now." The TSA supervisor turned around, her face flickering with recognition as she saw Michael and then looked at Gabriella, who was still standing there visibly upset. "Sir, I'm not sure what the issue is." Michael cut her off with a look that could freeze fire. "Oh, you know what the issue is, sweetheart. My wife just got treated like trash by one of your so-called agents, so you can either handle this like a professional, or I'll make sure your whole department knows about it." The supervisor's face went pale. Gabriella could see the blood drain from her face as she realized who Michael was. She knew who Michael Jenkins was, the man who owned half the city and had more power than she could even comprehend. "Sir, I don't know what happened here," the supervisor stammered, clearly trying to keep it together. "I'll look into this right away." Michael was having none of it. "Look into it? Nah, we're beyond looking into it. Your agent ripped my wife's dress in front of everyone, and don't even try to tell me it was an accident. I saw the way he was eyeing her. It was deliberate." Gabriella felt her heart race, but she kept her composure. She wasn't some damsel in distress. She was a woman who knew what she deserved, and today, she wasn't going to let anyone disrespect her. The TSA supervisor shot a glance at the agent who had ripped Gabriella's dress, still standing by the checkpoint. The man shifted uncomfortably under Michael's glare, but didn't dare move. "Michael, You know what we've got to do, Gabriella spoke up, her voice steady but filled with the quiet fury she had been holding back. This isn't just about the dress. This is about what he did to me, and to every woman who's ever been disrespected by someone like him. I'm not letting him get away with it. Michael looked at her, his expression softening for a moment. He knew exactly what she meant. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about dignity, about standing up and saying, I won't be treated like this. Damn right, Michael said. You want this to go away? We do it my way. We're going to show everyone what happens when you cross the wrong person. He turned to the TSA supervisor, his voice dropping low but filled with enough power to make anyone in earshot listen. Listen, I want that agent fired. Today. No questions, no delays. And I want a public apology to my wife. I don't care if you have to call the media yourself. I'm not playing around. The supervisor opened her mouth, but Michael wasn't finished. And while you're at it, you can take a look at your whole damn department. There's no place for people like him in a professional environment. This is 2024, not the damn 1950s. Gabriella could see the supervisor's hands shaking, but she knew this was exactly what Michael did best. He didn't wait for justice to come to him. He went out and took it. He had the power to make people listen, and when he spoke, people listened. The agent, who had been trying to slink away unnoticed, now found himself the center of attention. Gabriella could feel his eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. If he thought he could intimidate her, he had another thing coming. She'd been through worse. This was nothing. Then, just as quickly as it all started, the situation turned into a full-on spectacle. A few minutes later, an airport spokesperson arrived to address the issue, trying to smooth things over. But Michael wasn't backing down. Gabriella stood by, watching the scene unfold, feeling something inside her click back into place. Today wasn't just about her dress. It was about making sure no one ever thought they could tear her down without consequences. As the TSA agent was escorted out of the terminal, head hanging low, Gabriella met Michael's gaze. He gave her a small nod as if to say, "We did this together." Gabriella felt a surge of pride, not just in Michael, but in herself too. She had been hurt, humiliated, but she was stronger now. They both were. And now, it was time to make sure everyone knew that respect is earned. This was just the beginning. As the TSA agent was led away, his face a mix of shame and disbelief, Gabriella stood tall. Her anger was simmering down, but her resolve was stronger than ever. Michael, cool as ever, kept his eyes locked on the chaos unfolding. "Apologies aren't enough," Michael said, his voice steady and commanding. "I want that man gone, and I want the world to know why." The airport spokesperson, visibly sweating, nodded. "We'll handle it immediately, sir." Gabriella stepped forward, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "You better. And don't think this will be forgotten. This isn't just about a dress. It's about respect." Michael squeezed her hand, a quiet assurance in his grip. "Don't worry, baby. This won't be the last they hear of it." As they walked away, Gabriella glanced at Michael. "You sure know how to make a point." He smirked. "I make every point count." The agent was fired that same day. The press was soon all over the story, and Michael ensured it went public. No one would forget how Gabriella was treated, and no one would dare repeat it. Gabriella walked out of the airport with a quiet smile, stronger than before. She wasn't just the woman in the torn dress anymore. She was someone you didn't mess with. Michael leaned in, whispering, "I've always got you, baby." And with that, they left, knowing they'd sent a message loud and clear. Don't mess with a woman who knows her worth.